the historic district of Manassas. And today we have a very special day. We're celebrating the William Q. Judge Day. He is very, very instrumental to development of theosophical movement, and he left us over 200 articles and books. William Q. Judge was born in 1851, and in 1864 his family settled in Brooklyn in New York. The talk will be about his life and his contribution to theosophical movement. But before we go to today's talk, I would like to introduce program for this month. We will have next Sunday online Ocean of Theosophy, followed on March 19th by the cycles with the Gita readings. And just to remind everyone that United Lodge of Theosophists professes no affiliation with any form of belief, and everyone is welcome who upholds the ideals of the theosophical movement and the principles of the United Lodge of Theosophists. With this, I would like to go to the first reading for today. And this reading is from writings of H.P. Blavatsky. Harmony in the physical and mathematical world of sense is justice in the spiritual one. Justice produces harmony, and injustice, discord. Discord on a cosmic scale means chaos and annihilation. If there is a developed immortal spirit in man, it must be in everything else, at least in the latent or germinal state. And it can only be a question of time for each of these germs to become fully developed. There is a way to avoid reincarnation, and Buddha taught if in this doctrine of poverty, restriction of the senses, perfect indifference to the objects of this earthy veil of tears, freedom from passion, and frequent intercommunication with the Atma, soul contemplation. The cause of reincarnation is ignorance of our senses and the idea that there is any reality in the world, anything except abstract existence. From the remotest antiquity, mankind as a whole have always been convinced of the existence of a personal spiritual entity within the personal physical man. This inner entity was more or less divine according to its proximity to the crown, Christos. The closer the union, the more serene man's destiny, the less dangerous the external conditions. This belief is neither bigotry nor superstition, only an ever-present instinctive feeling of the proximity of another spiritual and invisible world, which, though it be subjective to the senses of the outward man, is perfectly objective to the inner ego. Furthermore, they believe that there are external and internal conditions which affect the determination of our will upon our actions. And with this, we will go, and then we will go to the reading 3 and reading 4.
Thank you. Reading number 2 is from the writings of Robert Crosby. Theosophy is the path of knowledge. It is given out in order, among other things, for that good motive and wisdom might go hand in hand. If it is remembered that the purpose of life is to learn, and that all is made up of learning, the ordinary duties of everyday existence are seen to be the means by which we learn many things. Do thy duty by every duty, leaving results to the law. Theosophy was once happily stated to be sanctified common sense, and I am glad that you perceive it. The theosophical movement is greater than any society or organization. The latter are but temporal, changing with the nature and understanding of those who constitute them and influence their policies and ideals. They correspond to our physical bodies, whereas the movement corresponds to the soul. There are many kinds of bodies, and work has to be done in each in accordance with the possibilities afforded by nature. Those who pin the faith on any body or are choosing a transitory guidance of frail support. Most of them are looking for authority. The human weakness that makes priestly domination possible leads to spiritual darkness in course of time. ULT is a name given to certain principles and ideas. Those who associate themselves with those principles and ideas are attracted and bound by them only, not by the fellows who do likewise or who refrain or who cease to consider themselves so bound. The declaration is not a theory, but a carrying out of the spirit of the messengers. So we move to reading 3.
The third reading is from excerpts from Notes on the Bhagavad Gita. All of us are brought to this study by our own request made to our higher self, which is Krishna. It does not matter whether he is now consciously aware of having made the request, nor whether it was made as a specific act in this life or in any other precedent one. It was made, and it is to be answered at the right time. Some of us have asked this many times before, in ancient births of ours and other bodies in other lands. Others are making the request now, but it is more than likely, in the case of those who are spurred on to intense effort and longing to know the truth, and to strive for unity with God, that they have put up the petition ages since. We take up the gauge over and over, life after life, in experience after experience, never completely defeated if we always look to Krishna, our higher self. All the passing shows of life, whether fraught with disaster or full of fame and glory, are teachers. He who neglects them neglects opportunities which seldom the gods repeat. And the only way to learn from them is through the heart's resignation. For when we become in heart completely poor, we at once are the treasurers and dispersers of enormous riches. The attitude to be assumed, then, is that of doing every act, small and great, trifling or important, because it is before us to do, and as a mere carrying out by us as instruments of the will of that deity who is ourself. This practice is the highest, that which someday we must and will learn to perform. Effacement in the Supreme Spirit is gained by the right-seeing sage whose sins are exhausted, who hath cut asunder all doubts, whose senses and organs are under control, and who is devoted to the well-being of all creatures. If the last qualification is absent, then he is not a right-seeing sage and cannot reach union with the Supreme. It must follow that the humblest imitator, everyone who desires to come to that condition, must try to the best of his ability to imitate the sage who has succeeded. And such is the word of the Master, for he says in many places that if we expect to have his help, we must apply ourselves to the work of helping humanity, to the extent of our ability. No more than this is demanded. Krishna says that those who with the eye of spiritual wisdom see that the self is all, begin to reincarnate with that belief ingrained in them. Hitherto, they had come back to earth without that single idea, but possessed of many desires, and of ideas which separated them from the self. Now they begin to return fully at rest in the self, and working out their long accumulated karma, and at last they become a Mahatma, or a great soul. Next is the biographical talk on William Q. Judge.
William P. Judge, born April 3, 1851. One of his famous sayings, and one of their many, remember that life is the outcome of the ever-living. If you have come to comprehend a little of the mystery of life, and can value its attractions according to their worth, these are no reasons why you should walk forth with solemn countenance, to brighten the enjoyments of other men. Life to them is as real as the mystery is to you. Their time will come, as yours has, so hasten it for them, if you can, by making life brighter, more joyous, better. Mr. Judge, as the first speaker mentioned, left us over 200 articles and books. This is the logic of discipleship is implicit in the fundamental law of sacrifice, number one. This disciple strives to gain critical knowledge and master the powers of nature, first as found within himself and then in the world, only to use them only half of the whole of humanity. His unfaltering allegiance to the masses of wisdom makes William Q. Judge an instrument of service which can be furthered for further greater work. Number two. Mr. Judge exemplified discipleship in every aspect of his thought and action and dedicated every breath to its goal. William Point Judge was born in Dublin, Ireland, on April 13, 1851. A frail child, he became seriously ill in his 7th year. His health deteriorated rapidly, despite the best efforts of his attending doctor, and the doctor finally informed the parents that their son was dead. But to their amazement, however, William suddenly revived and slowly regained his health. After his illness, his parents discovered that William could read, an ability no one had detected before. And he plunged into serious volumes in Mithraism, phrenology, magic, religion, and philosophy. He later prepared some notes titled In a Borrowed Body, suggesting that he had been a simple student in a high philosophy for many lives on this earth. He noted that he was once reborn in the family of a Raja, and in time came to sit on his throne after his death. One day, an old wandering Brahmin asked if he was ready to follow his vows made long life before and go to do some work in a foreign land. He fell asleep and dreamed he thought he was at the bedside of a small, dying European boy. When he awoke, he was that boy. While William was still young, his mother, Mary Kwan, died in childbirth. The potato famine was going on, and his father, Frederick, decided to take him and his 6 brothers and sisters to America, where they might have a better opportunity to develop their talent and earn a living. Arriving in New York in 1864, when he was 13 years old, the family settled in Brooklyn, where, despite hardship, William attended school. He was number 3 over here. He was a frail boy, but with an indomitable will and perseverance. He was at the bank of a stream with other boys one day. All of them swam to an island a little way off and jeered and mocked at their younger comrade who could not swim. The small William plunged into the water, touched the bottom, ran a few steps, came back up, grabbed some air, went to the bottom again, rose and kicked and sank and did this until finally he reached at the margin of the island to be drawn out halfway unconscious. The recorder of this event added that nothing could be more characteristic of Mr. Judge. As number 4, he was always to do his duty. It was this kind of perseverance that later came out when he was seen to be giving lectures when no one was present. He was determined that theosophy would become established in the United States. William joined the legal staff of George P. Andrews as a clerk. While preparing himself for the bar, his father died, and Judge found himself thrust into the world. He became a citizen in April 1872 and was admitted shortly thereafter to the State Bar of New York, where he practiced for the remainder of his life, specializing in commercial law. His compassion, integrity, conscientiousness, and intelligence were widely recognized, and number 5, he was called the Christ of the legal profession. In 1874, Judge married a staunch Methodist lady who bore him a child. He had natural fondness for children. Number 6, they would sit on his lap and gather around him when he appeared, and that increased his pain when his daughter died of diphtheria in infancy. In the same year, Judge read Colonel Henry Steele Olcott's accounts of the spiritualistic homestead in Cheatham, Vermont, Chittenden, Vermont. These articles were published in the New York Daily Graphic and included descriptions of the visit of a Russian lady of distinguished birth and rare education and natural endowments. Judge asked Olcott if he might meet Madame Blavatsky. She considered, and Judge met her in her apartment at 46 Irving Place, New York City. He later recalled that it was her eye that attracted me, the eye of one who I must have known in lives long passed away. She looked at me in recognition at that first hour, and never since has that look changed. Not as a questioner of philosophy did I come before her, nor as one groping in the dark for lights that schools and fanciful theories have obscured, but as one who, wandering many periods through the corridors of life, was seeking the friends who could show their design, who could show where the design for the work had been hidden. And she responded, revealing the plans once again, and speaking no words to explain, simply pointed them out and went on with the task. It was as if by the evening before we had parted, leaving yet to be done some detail of a task taken up with one common end. It was teacher and pupil, elder brother and younger, both bent on the one single end, but she with the power and the knowledge that belong but to lions and sages. The encounter often judge forever. He profoundly affected the theosophical movement. Having seen number 7, the lion's glance and diamond heart of HPB, he spent many evenings learning from her. It was after 12 one night until 4 a.m. The judge later wrote to Damodar that I heard and and saw both with her in New York. Materializations of solid objects, as well as temporary illusions, the duplication of letters by precipitation, strange sounds, and psychokinetic teleportation of objects from one room to another were all witnessed by the ego student. But all that paled and grew dim before the glorious hours spent in listening to the words of those illuminated ones who came often late at night when all was still and talked to us by the hour. I was persuaded such was the case because there were many indications to sight or ordinary sight, but easily seen and recognized by one who was expected and on the alert for such things, that led me to believe others were occupying the body of HPV and either watching or instructing us. During a public lecture, HPV, HESL, all call it, and Judge agreed to found number 8, the Theosophical Society, which was formally inaugurated November 17, 1875. In addition to his daily usefulness to the society, Judge number 9 helped HPV prepare ISIS Unveiled. He suggested the term elemental to indicate centers of force acted upon by conscious agents. The publication of ISIS aroused much interest in theosophy, and a constellation of brilliant intellectuals gathered around HPV. But when she sailed with Colonel Walcott to India in December 17, 1878, Mr. Judge was only 27 years of age at the time. Left the boy was in his life. His isolation, as well as domestic difficulties and the demands of his profession, all conspired to withdraw Judge from active theosophical work. During this time, his inner resources were cultivated and refined. From 1879 to 1883, Domador and Judge exchanged many beautiful and moving letters. Number 10, Domador's closeness to HPV and the Mahatmas inspired Judge to live only for theosophy. And his own spiritual strength often came to the aid of Domador. Their profound friendship, reverence, and respect for one another is a model of relations between disciples and the wisdom of religion. Judge fervently desired to go to India, but did not do so until he was called. In June, he received a clear communication to proceed, and he left New York early in 1883. He stopped in London and in England in order to, number 11, assist the HPV with the initial preparation of the secret doctrine. Judge traveled home to India and was warmly received. He, number 12, gave theosophy the destiny of India and other lectures across India. Arriving at the headquarters of the Theosophical Society in Adyar, Madras, in August 10 of that year. Judge returned to New York by England in November. His finances and position in the organization quickly improved. He set about reorganizing the Theosophical Society in America. Number 13. In 1886, the American section was formed, with Judge as permanent general secretary, and he gathered willing workers to expand the influence of the movement across the country. French societies were established, and Judge started the number 14 path in 1886 to give them a continuous flow of spiritual thought. He wrote many of the articles for the path, and under various pseudonyms, and HPV called its contents pure booty. Number 15. In 1888, an epitome of theosophy was published and widely read. Robert Crosby read it and joined the Boston branch of the Theosophical Society. When Judge met him for the first time, he said, "Crosby, you are on my list." Crosby soon became the most energetic worker in the Boston branch, as well as many articles. Number 16, 1889, saw the publication of the Theosophical Forum, which continued under Judge's direction until his death, and the aphorisms of Patanjali. In that year, HPV declared Mr. Judge to be her only friend. Number 17, I'm going to go to the bottom down there. Echoes from the Orient appeared in 1899, followed by a rendition of the Bhagavad Gita, the first series of letters that have helped me. Judge aided in the initiation of the Oriental department papers, consisting of translations of Eastern scriptures. Judge's administrative duties steadily increased. HPV called on him to help in critical phases of the innermost aspect of the movement. Also in 1890, the Theosophical Society elected him vice president. Under his direction, the American section became the largest of the sections and generously shared its prosperity with headquarters. The New York Sun published a derogatory piece on HPV in 1890, July 1890. Judge represented her in a suit against the paper. The Sun continued to investigate the accusations it had published and concluded that they were utterly without foundation. The paper published an apology, number 19, and in 1892, and printed an article by Judge on H.P. Blavatsky's life on the title, The Esoteric Sheep. Now that the messenger had withdrawn, the forces antagonistic to the Theosophical movement rapidly regrouped to focus attention on Judge. They struck just when Judge was appreciated most deeply by sincere students of Theosophy. In number 20, in 1893, the honorable place given to Theosophy at the unique World Parliament of Religions in Chicago was due to great measure to Judge's influence in his work. Also in 1893, the Ocean of Theosophy was published. Falcon Whitelow's Standard Dictionary, number 21 of 1895, lists the judge as a specialist in theosophical concepts and included dozens of definitions of theosophical and Sanskrit terms written by him. The wide range of accusations made against HPB in her lifetime emerged again to be thrown at him. During 1893 and 1904, he was number 22, I think is down there. Yeah, going to counter bottom left. He was charged with the one crime he was not capable of committing, which was abusing the name of masters. Those who knew him well recognized that he was a mysterious being. Many were convinced that he was a Hindu rishi, occupied that a Hindu rishi occupied the instrument which bore his name. During his trips to South America, where HPB said was a lodge of masters, Judge had contracted Chigger's disease, Chigger's fever. At the end of 1894, he was warned. He warned his closest workers that the coma of his body dictated that he should die in 1895, so it might be made to survive by extraordinary means. He continued his active participation in theosophy to include traveling, writing, and making plans into 1896. Number 23. On March 21, 1896, at about 9 a.m., he quietly passed from this world after delivering an occult aphorism. There should be calmness, hold fast, go slow. But despite the warnings given by Judge, his absence left his closest lieutenants in confusion. Number 24. Ask Crosby, Judge often advised to inquirers. He thinks and acts as I do. Robert Crosby eschewed public leadership, but lived up to that high compliment by quietly holding the Theosophical Society in America together at its core. He gave all that he had in time, money, and effort to its work, and was loyal to those who guided him. For him, theosophy meant masters and teachings, as given out by HPB and WPJ. When the society was moved from New York to Point Loma, California, Crosby came alone, but he was saddened by the drift of the society away from the dynamic thought and one-pointed action of the founders. When the issue was a successorship produced a clamor of personalities and it eventually obscured the heart of the theosophical teaching, he quietly withdrew to Los Angeles. Gathering together a few dedicated students in 1906, he laid the foundations for a resurrection society. In 1909, he initiated the United Lodge of Theosophists on the basis originally set out by HPB and in the spirit exemplified by WPJ. 3 years later, Theosophy magazine appeared to give fresh expression to the philosophy of theosophy and to keep the writings of founders in print. Neither Judge nor Crosby allowed the light of devotion to the Mahatmas to flicker for an instant. Rather, it blazed brighter in the deepening darkness. Out of its fire arose a crystalline vision of the work, and end is the end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of theosophy and the simplification and practice of those principles through a true realization of the self, a profound conviction of universal brotherhood. And I bring 4 new.
The reading number 4 is from William Q. Judge writings. The way of inward peace is in all things to conform to the pleasure and disposition of the divine will, such as would have all things succeed and come to pass according to their own fancy, are not come to know this way, and therefore lead a harsh and bitter life, always restless and out of humor without reading the way of peace. It was said by one who pretended to teach the mysteries, "It is needful that I have pleasant location and beautiful surroundings." He who is a true theosophist will wait for nothing of the sort, either before teaching or what is first needful, learning. It will perhaps be agreeable, but if the divine inspiration comes only under those conditions, then indeed is the divine afar from the most of us. He can only be a factor for good or teach how to approach the way, who, forgetting his own surroundings, strives to beauty and illuminate those of others. The effort must be for the good of others, not the gratifying of our own senses or love for the agreeable or pleasant. If you have obtained true knowledge, it forces you to meet all men not only halfway, but more than that to seek them. It urges you not to retire, but seeking contact to plunge into the misery and sorrow of the world. And with your cheering world, if you have no more, the mystic has little else, strive to lighten the burden for some struggling soul. Thou mayst look for silence in tumult, solitude in company, light in darkness, forgetfulness in pressures, vigor in despondency, courage in fear, resistance in temptation, peace in war, and quiet in tribulation. With this, we conclude the celebration of William Q. Judge Day. And if anyone has questions, we have the speaker who given the talk. We'll welcome the discussion now. If there are no questions, we can continue with the online fellowship. Unfortunately, we cannot invite you in person. We will continue in person, but we'll keep everyone in the spirit.
Yes, and wherever you are in that land, let us at least assemble virtually and rededicate ourselves to Mr. Judge's cause, which is also our cause, which is to make theosophy a living power in our lives, and to do what we can to help our neighbors and otherwise to broadcast these teachings for the benefit of humanity. Thanks all who joined us all over the world, and we will now open the conversation and continue on for the rest of this time, and then we will go to our study after this time period is over with the continuation of the Bhagavad Gita, the second hour.